Hello ladies and gentlemen, Fox King here again, and today I am finally bringing you my guide to Otherverse. This is going to be a three-part guide, so in this particular video I am not talking about any of the specific dungeons or how to clear them. So if that's what you're looking for, check out the second and third parts where I'm going to go into detail about that. This video is simply to describe what Otherverse is, what the dungeons are like, what Exorcism is, and what kind of gear drops when running Otherverse. So essentially, why you should even bother doing it. So, in order to access this place, which is the first thing you need to know, you need to talk to either Bowmaster Ludmilla, who stands between Marlene Kitzel and Wu as you're going to Behemoth in the main map, or you can come straight here by going to the channel selection screen, and at the very top above where it shows all of the channels, you'll see it starts on a general tab, and if you flip it over to the tab that says Saint Horn, choose any of those three channels and you'll come to this room right here, where when you come out you'll be in a totally different zone that is not on the main map of the game. And you also see here these two NPCs. They are very important to you. Natalia Sue in particular, because she has your repeatable quests, the Delirium Debris and the Interdimensional Fragment quests. Make sure, especially in the case of the Delirium Debris, this is the really important one. Make sure that you have these repeatable quests as you do your Otherverse runs. They cannot be completed by yourself, so they can't be done on easy, but after that, they are very helpful in grinding for your materials. Natalia Sue also sells you consumables, which are going to be very important for some of the dungeons, including these silly little things, which you have probably never paid much attention to before. But in certain cases, which I will go over on a case-by-case basis, these are actually very helpful. And she also sells you your Chronicle 2 gear, both set and non-set pieces. And Ludmilla sells you the auras, which I'll go into later, as well as set and non-set Chron 3 gear. Now, you may find it odd that it's called OV2 and OV3, which it is kind of odd to people who are seeing it now. For just a little history lesson, I'll explain why that is in the description below if you're interested. I'm not going to waste time talking about it here. But anyway, once you're here, go to the left and you'll see this here. Oops. Let me undo that real quick. And these are the dungeons. The ones on the left are the OV2 dungeons, and the ones on the right are OV3. Now, there's a few things you should know about these. First of all, when you're doing the dungeon on easy, you can only go in by yourself. So the first epic quest that you'll get will require you to go in on easy. You cannot take a party, and when you go in on easy, you will have video tutorials showing you generally how to get through each room. And as such, I'm not going to reiterate those too much in the next parts of this series, but there are tips and tricks that you won't learn through those videos that the game provides you that I'm going to talk about. And also, some experiences are very different when you're in a party. For instance, Darkside is extremely easy solo compared to what it is in a party. So I'm just going to go over some of the things that you can expect to see, which you would otherwise be blindsided in because the tutorials don't explain it. Alright, anyway, each of these dungeons can only be entered twice a day. Now, you can buy more entries from the Sarah shop, but naturally, just 2 a day. And you'll notice when I mouse over here, like I said, easy, 1 person only. Anything after easy, you need at least 2 people to enter. And you'll see the Exorcism requirement, which goes up as I tab over. When you first start your epic quest line, they will give you a ring with 10 Exorcism, just so you can enter here. And Exorcism is a stat that comes on the gear that drops from Otherverse. So in order to move up to the higher difficulties, you need to collect gear which drops in the lower difficulties. And the gear that drops, say, on easy, is only certain parts of your overall equipment regalia. So you'll only get, say, shoes, rings, and shoulder pieces from easy, at least in OV2. OV3 follows a slightly different pattern, but the point is that you need to collect the gear that drops on the lowest difficulty, then you move up, you collect the gear that drops there, and once you get to hard and ultimate, all of the gear slots can drop, and set items will start dropping as well. You'll also note that most public parties only go up to hard. Very few will be advertising running ultimate, so chances are, in order to run it on ultimate difficulty, you will need a predetermined party, maybe from guild members or whatever, because chances are you're not going to get into a party for ultimate with just random players. Now, back to the exorcism thing. Just because you don't meet the exorcism parameter requirement will not bar you from entering. So, in theory, you could enter ultimate with 10 exorcism. It's not a good idea, because every point below the requirement, you receive a stat cut, up to 70%. So if you're going in with not enough exorcism, you will be significantly weaker than you are just regularly. And these are rather difficult dungeons to begin with, so you do not want that. However, if you're above the requirement, you can receive up to a 20% stat buff. And I will put the equations as to how that's calculated in the description below. They're just cut from the DFO wiki. I didn't do the calculations myself, I'm sorry. I'm trusting the wiki to have its facts straight. So, there's that. Also, something to note about each individual dungeon, and this is going into the gear, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Um, each dungeon has a specific list of gear that is inclined to drop there, down to each room. So when you're grinding for your gear, if you know where that gear drops, you can avoid trying to find it in all of the other dungeons if you know it only drops in one place. There used to be a grid, again, on the wiki that explained which dungeons dropped what pieces of gear. I admittedly do not know if that has been updated and if it's consistent with the layout now, but it was accurate before, so go ahead and check that out if you're looking for anything in particular. But you may note that these dungeons are level 70, and you may be thinking, well, the level cap's 85 as of now. Why do I care to grind for these pieces of gear if their stats aren't going to be the same as what I would expect to see from a level 85 dungeon? And that's a reasonable thing to ask. So the point of the Otherverse gear is that they provide bonuses to specific skills that no other items are going to give. So you'll see here as an example, this is a Chronicle 2 sword that I picked up. It says Specialty Sword, Final Attack. It'll drop just like this from the OV2 dungeons, and it's pretty much just your average sword until you get to the very bottom, where it says Final Attack, Max Slash Count plus 2. So Final Attack is a skill that only Chaoses know, and it gives the modifier of increased hit count. And then if I go over here for my armor, it's, down to the bottom, final attack strength plus 9%. That's the kind of stuff that the Otherverse gear has. It gives you bonuses to specific attacks, which allow you to specialize in using those skills, and can ultimately become incredibly powerful when combined properly to make one or two specific skills just incredibly powerful. And you'll notice that this is called a specialty sword, whereas this is a force heavy armor. The Chronicle 2 gear have prefixes, and each prefix describes what kind of modifier it gives. So, force is damage, specialty is things like hit count, and there's a lot of other things: swift, zooming, retention, fierce. You'll eventually see all of them. I'm not going to list what every single one does, but that's generally how it works. The OV3 gear is a little bit different, and it will drop just like this. The Cracked Dimensional Shoes Chaos. You'll notice it doesn't have any modifiers on it right now, so it's essentially just your standard run-of-the-mill piece of gear as it drops. What you do with this is you use these auras, which you can either pick up or buy from Bowmaster Lumilla, and you'll right click one of them and you can choose the gear that you want to modify, and this pop-up will show up in which you can mouse over the skills and it will show you what using that aura on this piece of gear will do. So the red auras are for damage, the blue ones reduce both cooldown and MP cost, and the green ones are very much like the specialty prefix, where it's things like hit count, occasionally a slight boost to damage and reduction to cooldowns. Not everything can receive a buff from each of these things, so if I right click on the green aura, you'll notice that the list has a few different options, but some of the options will still not show any modifiers, like this one right here. So if I mouse over this one, it has a drop down, increase attack and reduce cooldown by 2%. This one doesn't have anything, so it would be a waste to apply it here, unless this is just a bug and it's not showing up. But again, if I were to use the red one, not all the same skills pop up, so you can't use everything on every piece of gear. Now, if you see my shoes here, there's 2 modifiers. You can put up to 2 modifiers on any one piece of gear. However, once you have put one aura on, using a second one comes with the risk of destroying the gear. So I do not recommend you do that unless you have a backup. Also, you can't put the same exact modifier twice. So since I used a green and blue aura for Final Slash on this pair of boots, I would not have been able to use a second green or blue aura for Final Slash. However, I can use 2 green auras or 2 blue auras or 2 red auras, as long as they're for different skills, or a green and a blue or red and blue, whatever, for the same skill. You just can't duplicate the exact same buff. You'll also note that there are set gear for the Chronicle gear. Each OV2 and OV3 has 3 sets for every subclass. So every subclass has 6 sets total. And I have a set ring right here to show you. And you'll see that it does not have any of the modifiers that the other gear has. Now this in particular is an OV3 set gear, but the same applies for OV2 as well. And you cannot use the auras, to modify these gears. So if you had a ring for your class that was a set item and one that was a not set item, you would rather use the one that was not a set item until you had at least 3 pieces of the set, because that's when you'll actually see benefits from using it. Now the sets can be extremely powerful, and that's really why a lot of people grind Otherverse to begin with, is because some of the sets, even though they're technically level 70, are endgame quality. So that's why you do this. And you can also just have a bunch of the non-set pieces that are specified to a specific attack that you want. A common one that I used to see back in old DFO was, and I don't know if they still do this, but for male Spitfires, they would have Neil the Sniper sets where it was just nothing but these kinds of things with bonus to shot and damage from Neil the Sniper. So they would have like 20 shots and be able to clear an entire room. Then they would just switch out to a different set of gear. And a lot of people will carry, at endgame, will carry multiple sets of Chronicle gear to suit their current needs. And again, as I pointed out with Natalia Sue, some of the gear can drop in forms of recipes, which is why I was pointing out the Delirium debris. This is what a recipe looks like. Most of them require the same kinds of things: clear cubes, hardeners, stone of delirium, Cargon furnace bases, low-grade elemental crystals, and stones of clarity, which are onyxes. I don't think I have any on me. No, I don't. But that's what makes the stone of clarity. So that's why the Stone of Delirium repeatable quest is so important. And I believe that's everything I have to say in this particular video. So I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you now know at least why you should be doing Otherverse and the kinds of things you need to pay attention to. Of course, the next 2 parts are going to be critical in your success for going through each of the dungeons. So we'll go over that next time. So until then, thank you for watching.